My name is Howardena Pindell. I'm an artist. I'm originally from Philadelphia, and I started off as a figurative artist, and I gradually became abstract, and then by the time I was about, I guess in my 30s or so, I started mixing both abstract and figurative. So I kind of make a mishmash of it, the little bit abstract, and sometimes it's only abstract, and usually it's figurative abstract. I've been working with arrows and vectors since around 1972, 73, and my work often uses small dots of color or ovals. The work has many stages it's gone through, so the pieces I've done at Brandywine actually have been done over a period of time. I think the earlier pieces I did, maybe about 10 years ago, the diptych, and then the piece I'm working on now, right here, is just a single print, and then I'm doing a second part to the first diptych, which is part of an autobiography series. I worked on the first autobiography diptych, I think it might have been about 10 years ago. And I'm used to working large. My paintings, I think the biggest painting I've done was about 7 feet by about 22 feet. And my mosaics run around 14 feet to 18 feet. So I like working big. But when I did the first autobiography print, the double print, I wanted to be able to work life-size on the paper. That is, you'll see two profiles and arms with hands. Those were literally drawn. What I did was I just put my head down on the paper and my arms and hands on the paper, and I traced them so that I wanted to have a paper that was large enough that I could do a life-size silhouette, as opposed to having it made smaller. And for the second part of it that I'm working on now, it's the same thing. I wanted it to be the same scale, the same size, and I wanted to be able to just silhouette myself, to trace myself onto the paper, my profile, my hands, and my arms. So that's really what established the scale. A smaller piece of paper, it wouldn't have worked. Then what I wanted to include were postcard images from my travels or from my life in general. The first diptych, you'll see images of Japan, you'll see Egypt, you'll see Russia. Those are places that I had visited. And I've always been going through this tussle about religion. My family was not religious in the sense that they were born again Christians, but a number of their friends were in very serious Christian cults. I'll put it that way. I know that sounds strange, but one example, the Pillar of Fire, a Bible-based, put it that way, cult, where literally a woman living today would give her salary to her husband and he decides how to spend it. So very, what I would call like severe Christianity. Anyway, so you'll find like a Christ image in the first diptych. The second diptych, I'm involved more, and this would be currently, with looking at genetic information, tracing my ancestors. And that appears in my paintings as well. There's a painting at the Wadsworth Athenaeum where I'm a life-size figure. The painting is about 10 feet. I've traced my body, sewn it back in, and it has references to Africa, to slavery, and so forth. So the second diptych has very clear references to Africa, also to Egypt, which has a twist to it because I did a DNA, I should say, test through the National Geographic Genome Project, and what they found was that my matrilineal side, my mother's side, originated thousands, like 80,000 years ago in Uganda. But what they call a haplogroup, the group that my mother's side belonged to, were those Africans who migrated into Egypt who would have become the ancient Egyptians. So I find that interesting that Egyptian images appear in both prints. The haplogroup, I think it's called L3, also migrated through India to become the Aboriginals in Australia, and they also migrated to the Pacific to become the Tahitians, the Pacific Islanders, and so forth. So something that I'm finding in my work, this sort of issue of sort of divination or premonition, I find that my use of Egypt in the first print was before, 10 years before I knew that I have ancestors who migrated to Egypt to become the ancient Egyptians. And then I currently included, I've always been fascinated by Egypt, but I included it before I found out, and I just found out a few months ago, about the haplogroup number 3. So there's some interesting references that appear that have more importance to me than I realized when I included them. So I consider the prints a kind of time capsule that sort of encapsulate the things that concerned me, or almost future things and current things that concern me at the point of the print. And this new one has a lot of very clear African references, additional references to Egypt, but also there's a ship in it. And I've been very interested in the middle passage, which appears often in my work, either as water or as a main theme, so that now in this print, it's not included in the first print, but the second print, you'll see a ship, which may have looked like what we were brought over in during the middle passage.